Hello, I'm Eric Brax, and this video is the meaning of life video. You've probably seen the fast version, which I'm really happy with actually, but this is going to be probably over 2 hours, and I'm going to go through each of the images in a slower fashion and get them all done fully. So this video is going to include the full A Way to Be as well. That way there'll only be two videos, the fast version and the meaning of life. The painting behind me has turned out to be really handy for this because it seems to be kind of appropriate and fun. It is Virgo A star. It's the first black hole ever photographed. And if you squish your eyes way down so that you can hardly see, then you can kind of see it just like the photograph. Anyway, that's what that is. Um, you'll be familiar with the title sheet, which is this, The Meaning of Life. Love equals energy. Nobody should be surprised that love is the answer. We all know that, don't we? We've heard so many songs and poems and seen movies. Everything we're about is love when we come down to it. But it's brought to us this. It's an experience that I've been through and now codified into these short 1, 2, 3 steps, which even to my eye is inarguable. This is clearly the right way for a human to be able to get themselves into the special zone that we call 100% well-being, but we also can call it enlightenment because for most people it's going to come with that sense of liberation and relief. It really is the summary of all human knowledge in terms of this is how you and any person you know can get to a place of mental well-being really, really quite fast in like a week. From this, we also get these profound things. All of society changes. The whole world changes because of this. I label the period that we're heading into as the end of war, but and that will take 20 years, okay? But only 20 years before wars are a thing of the total past. But it also brings with it the end of bullying immediately, the end of loneliness immediately, and the unity of science and religion. Do you think we can go on in life and have a unity between those two things? Wouldn't that be something? Well, it's going to happen, and it's actually unavoidable. Because this is all true, because this fits with everything that we know historically, and it fits with how we know our world can be when we behave well, simply well, and enjoy ourselves and live at our best, these things just come out. They just are the human spirit. We're basically doing that. We're releasing the human spirit by transcending the fear program, which causes everybody to not live their best life and feel like they're struggling continuously. So we want to do this to get out of that fear program and to start being able to sample life where everything is just wonderful. And then we find out that actually we're far more powerful than we've ever thought. Now, global warming and fusion, I believe, are going to be solved at the same time. We're going to need to know how to um, make an equilibrium or climate control the Earth's climate. But in order to do that, once we know how to do it, it's probably going to require some energy. So fusion is going to be a fabulous way to do that because it doesn't have any bad waste products. Now, we are currently really on the tail of these things, of course, but when we're all well and facing the right direction, and even once you've heard the information in this video, and you just dare yourself to imagine what the future will be like, you will probably come to the same conclusion that I have, and that is that in solving these two issues, we're going to be going at it like we're supporting our favorite sports team, but we'll be all united. We'll be supporting ourselves. Our different parts, like one country might do fantastically and make a big inroad here, and they will have a massive party because that's what we'll want them to have, because thank you. And also, they will share that information and then we'll all carry on forward. It's going to be like all of humanity solving this last problem that needs to be solved, and then being able to simply basically take a good long breather and relax for a little while. Because there won't be anything else we particularly really need to do quickly. Perhaps make sure no asteroids hit the Earth. But apart from that, we will we will we will simply exist as love. We ourselves will just spend our lives being joyful with each other, being fit, playing sports, being fit mentally, having debates, having enjoyment of every kind that's available to the human species. I say debates because we will all become quite clever. We won't be able to escape the exciting knowledge that humans have already amassed, and it'll be fun for everybody to keep learning and to just be interested in all the interesting things that have already happened, like history, for instance. It's just going to be so much fun. All right, this is probably already a long introduction, but on the other score, I've finished the first page. I'm just going to carry on now, just in case everything is working well. So this image has the small jigsaw of Einstein and a few of the people at the Solvay conference. And that's because it was a metaphor, a small jigsaw like that with just a few pieces seemed to be the perfect metaphor to explain what this information represents. When when strange bits of information just match together, and then you match them together, and then you realize what the next piece is going to be because of those other pieces, and it all falls into place. And as if it's a finished jigsaw, it just shows us a complete picture of the perfect future for all of the universe as far as we're concerned. Well, that's what's happened. My own path has been to just simply help myself because I was socially somewhat inept when I was young. Just had a lot of confusion, and so I wasn't able to function very well socially. So to solve that, I ended up coming up with the Kfag model, which is kindness, forgiveness, acceptance, and gratitude, breaking up love into four components that the mind can work with really easily, and using that to get myself to a point where I could understand the past. From that, I ended up having an idea that information equals love. That was a couple of years ago. I did a painting called that. And then since then, all the other bits and pieces have all fallen into place to create this. And right now is the first time that I'm really ready to explain this in a way which hopefully will all make sense and which is foundationally accepted as being really quite right, just correct. This is the right path forward. Okay, hang on to your hat, it says, because really, I mean, it blows your mind. In the same way as Darwin's idea changed the way we see everything, this is going to do the same thing. All right. So we start then, if we're introducing the subject to, to get things going, we might start like this, that on a blank page that is all truth, that represents all truth, we can have a sphere and pack into that sphere a whole lot of little spheres of all the knowledge, the truth that we currently have as human beings. And at the top here, we have physics and roofing, chemistry, computing, material science, and all science. Everything that we can test and say, this is correct because we can reproduce those results. But in the purple area here, and purple on this one and the next picture is going to represent confusion. This is just because it's our consciousness. It relates to who we are. And we haven't nailed that down up till this point, but that's what this is going to solve. So in these spheres are religion, spiritual paths, well-being, charisma, confidence, all of these subjects to do with humanity and the way we behave, often the strange way we behave. The reason we can know this is confusing is because if we ask 100, not just psychologists, but all wise people of the whole world, and ask them, how do we reinstate a person's confidence nice and quickly? We'll get 100 different answers, and none of them will be right, because if we knew that, we would already be doing it. That's right, isn't it? So ultimately, we are still living in this confusion to do with who we are, and it's all about our identity. It's about our origin story, and it's about assembling all of the truths that we've gotten so far to this point and being able to see the path that we're looking for, one without humans causing trouble for other humans or difficulty where no difficulty is required. Okay, so that's the introduction. Now we're going to have that same diagram, but now it's here. You've got the organized gold part, and we have the confusing purple part. And the features of the purple part are they're expensive for society. We know this. We all have Christmas dinners or something, an annual dinner, where we meet with our people, our families, and quite often we're talking about the law, education, banking, big pharma, and we're thinking, yeah, we know things are wrong. Somehow things are wrong. Politics. We intuitively know that this isn't quite how it's supposed to be. And yet we vote in new political parties and we think, oh, this time it's going to change. And in the end, nothing changes. And that's because we're kind of stuck because we don't know our identity. When governments around the world become sure about what to do to change education, that's when it's going to happen. And that's what this information is going to do. The pathway for that to happen is that we need to get this information onto podcasts, into global discussions, so that all the experts in the world can weigh in. I believe there's not a single person in the world who is sane who will disagree with any of this information because it's built on all good human knowledge. And that's the reason why all of these expensive features of society, which you can read, I'll read them quickly. Mental ill health, wasted talent, full hospitals, full law courts, policing costs, welfare costs, system mistrust. It's a big list of problems. They're all going to disappear within 2 years. Pretty much. You'll see most of it all start disappearing. We won't be really thinking about that anymore because those things will be dissolving as issues. But what we have is through this confusion, we have a single path, and we're going to label that love. Now, love equals energy is the meaning of life, and it's going to represent that path of love. And it's going to end up in a new configuration of knowledge. So that's our current knowledge with all that purple stuff. Now the purple's going to be gone, and love equals energy will be on the center of this nice compacted sphere of truth. Around that will be a way to be, which is the name of the short runway to enlightenment. And then around that will be human history, and from that comes all human knowledge, the true stuff. And so it's going to lead to those other things, like I said, of solving global warming and fusion. Um, yeah, and that takes care of that one. So this is going to go rather nicely because, did I say already, the original plan was to do a fast meaning of life, then the meaning of life, which would be all 10 of the next diagrams, which represent what that is. And then to do a separate one for our way to be, because that could take 2 hours on its own. But what I think I'm going to do instead is I'm going to put it all into this one video, the meaning of life. Okay? I call this human identity, but it's also our origin story, that meaning of life. It's to say that all historical paths to well-being align with love. That's to say that if we ask any guru how to be aligned with this way to be which works for people, they'll give us a description, a series of points and paragraphs. It's a top-down prescription on how to be on this path, the path of love. Similarly, it's the same with the Stoics as well, right? And even with psychology, it's a top-down description, prescription of how to be so that you're not causing trouble for yourself and others. Priests refer to the words of Jesus, and so they actually talk about love. It's that channel. Jesus's idea was 100% on point. It goes right down the middle of the channel here. Now, of course, the mystical stories are all attached to that, and so we want to leave those in that year 2000 years ago because that was normal for the times. But Jesus was that guy who spoke about love, and he was right. I've got down here also all the artists of the world. The job of any artist is to reveal beauty, to reveal truth. And I've got a magnifying glass here as well, and that's to represent science, because as you'll find out in this, love and truth are exactly the same thing. Truth is the biggest word there is, but love is how we feel it. All of our friends will agree that this is the right way to be, and everybody in the whole world. We all carry the description of how it should be perfectly in a wonderful world inside our hearts, and that's the thing that unifies us all, the thing that we can all agree on. Because of our fear program, we haven't been behaving that way up till this point. But now that the information is in, it's going to be really easy for people to go, yes, and take it all on board and begin living this way. I end with the statement that everything that has ever happened has been about love, or the absence of it in the case of war and bullying. So ultimately, that page exists just to say that love is foundational to everything that human beings represent. The next image is this one that depicts original farmer's mind. So that's simply a way to check on ourselves. We can say, who were we 10,000 years ago, let's say? And even further back than that, we've got people who would put their handprint on a cave wall. Now, these people didn't have any of the complexity of modern society, and yet we were still human back then. And when we think about how those early societies would have been running well, we can find out and identify the features of who we are. And so I've got them listed here. We are love, family, community, purpose, motivation, rapport, curiosity, and creativity. And we live enthusiastically when we live from our hearts in a heart-based society using these natural human attributes. However, for the last 350 years, when science was rejected by religion, science has had to go its own way on its hero's journey. And it did so darn well that nowadays science logic is running our society. And that's kind of fantastic, except that it's been 100 years now, and now we can see it's failing badly. And it's not that surprising because this list of features to do with intellect-based society, these aren't who we are. These are just tools: science, efficiency, the law, economics, education, welfare, and systems. It's all intellectual. It's all the top stuff. And it's fantastic, except that the mind has to be tethered back to the heart to give it direction. I've included this diagram on the side here, this little image. It represents a TV series called Last One Standing. It's part of the Naked and Afraid series. And in it, people who are survivalist experts compete with each other to win a grand prize. But for most of the program, they're all working together in order to get near the end. When they're working together, we can see that this is the natural way of heart-based living. That is, if somebody hurts themselves, they get looked after. They're asked to stay home, look after yourself, because we're stronger with you than leaving you behind. People who begin to lose it a little bit, we calm them all down. We'll do everything we can to keep these people with us because we're stronger together. This is heart-based society, and it's here to show you that when we adopt love as our identity, it's not that our brains are going to fall out and all bad things will happen. These people are not soft-minded. They're very strong-minded and leaders. They have the skills and the strength, the inner strength to do the right thing in the right way and succeed spectacularly. So at the bottom of this page, I've written there, we are our hearts. We are love. How does this fit with science? We start this image with a tree with an apple in it. And that's to say that if we had a tree and we didn't know what kind of tree it was, and then a few months later it grew some apples, we would know, hey, this is an apple tree, because it's a process that creates apples, the apple tree. But our universe is the same, insofar as it starts with a quantum bit and ends up with the fruit that is us, our 3-pound miracle, the brain. We are the fruit of this universe. So this is a universe, a process that creates love. That is, it's a love universe. And it's also, this diagram is here to say as well, that we weren't just popped into here at some point. We are as much a part of everything that exists as everything that exists. In fact, nature has put within us the thing that it recognizes, I should say, the universe has put within us what it recognizes as being the identity, if you like, of the universe, the whole process of the universe. And that is the search for love, for well-being, for bliss, for joy. Anything that triggers joy for us is an indication from the universe that this is the way to go. This is for all survival in life forms, okay? So, now E is here because it represents energy, Einstein's energy, E equals mc squared. It's the domain of logic. This is everything outside of consciousness. It's the domain of logic, and it's administered by science and the intellect. This part here is our 3-pound miracle, a human consciousness. It's the domain of love, administered by religion and the heart. Although I should point out that only this exists. Everything else is back in time and no longer exists. This is what's real. This current pixel vertical line is the moment that we're in currently. Now, so you'll notice there's a gap between this consciousness and this blue scientific area, and that's what we're trying to fill in. So this is where we start. What if we were to sensibly expand the word love to include our physical environment? Right. So we have love currently as an internal experience, but if we took our brain and our spinal cord out and put it on a table, it would die. This gives us a clue that we can't just isolate those two things and call them consciousness. This is not right. we have to include the heart and the lungs and the stomach and everything that's powering this consciousness as a single unit. That is, rather than just the internal emotional experience of love, we can expand the word love to mean everything that's good for a human being. That way, we're taking into account the whole agent of a human being, a consciousness. So that's a good start, right? Everything that's good for a human being. That's kind of scientific love. That's to say that we've got to count the food we eat, the air we breathe, the temperate climate. When somebody brings us food, that's an act of love. If somebody builds us a house, a shelter, that's an act of love. So now love is everything that's good for a human being. If we think about, let's say, a rabbit needs the soil to burrow into. So that would be part of rabbit love, so that they could build their shelter. All plants need nutrients in the soil to get their food. So the nutrients in the soil is part of plant love. This is all fits together nicely, doesn't it? Love ultimately then is simply the right conditions for an organism to thrive. Okay? It seems pretty sensible. But we can go down a level. If I took a cell out of my arm and put it on a table, again, it would die. And that's because even at the cellular level, the cells need to be surrounded by the right conditions to go on in the next frame of the universe, this love universe. Everything has to be surrounded by the love of the right conditions. So that's cellular love. This is for plants and animals. But we can go even further down than that. There are molecules, there are proteins, there are cell wall structures, and those are not higgledy-piggledy affairs. It's not haphazard. They can only be created in the right conditions. So that would be molecular love. And it even fits right down at the bottom there with quantum mechanical effects. You'll see that those also only allow things to exist when the conditions are just right. So that leads us to the next image. It leads us right down our next image, which is this one. It leads us to be able to say, once we've had time to soak this in and think of it in our own thought process, we can say that love is the quantum mechanical process of this evolving universe. We can write that with the words, with the symbols, love equals energy, which is to say that we are love in a universe of love. And this simplifies much human knowledge. The synonyms of love are God, traditionally God, but truth. Truth is the biggest word of all, but love is how we feel truth. God too. We now feel this amazing feeling when we are faced with truth. There's beauty as well, the revelation of truth, energy, the universe, life, and reality, all synonyms. Now, the truth of love equals energy fills that gap that we talked about in the other diagram. It is the meaning of life. It literally is. On one side, we have consciousness. On the other side, we have all physical reality and all scientific truth. It makes, but now this formula is the gateway. This is our origin story, but it's also our identity. And when we look at this and we think about how we can use this to become well, the answer becomes obvious. So that the gateway of love equals energy brings us to 100% well-being accessible to every person using love, the Kfag model, which is simply love broken up into 4 components: kindness, forgiveness, acceptance, and gratitude. And it also, another piece of the jigsaw puzzle that sort of just appeared. It gives us a unified world in a position of looking at that, the advent of civilization, in a manner where we can see that we're living in the most exciting time there is to be alive, because we're about to transcend our animal origins, and everything is going to go fantastically for us from this point on. But more about that later. Ultimately, love equals energy is the doorway that solves and delivers every human dream. Next, we'll be talking about a way to be. So, a way to be is that method of achieving 100% mental well-being for any human being. And you'll notice with all of these things, there's nothing a person has to remember. It's all just truth. It's all things that we currently already recognize as being true. And once we lock them all in the right kind of order, we find we have a path to nirvana, as it were, like a tunnel through the mountains. Instead of having to do the hard 3-year journey, we got a short tunnel, and it only takes about a week to get there. Okay. So our first step is called understanding the past, where we end up with the Kfag model, and we're able to deal with our own past in a manner where we can close the doors gently on those events and feel like we have zero victimology as a result. That's the goal for the step one. And it matches every goal that any therapist ever has had for a person who's trying to become well. So again, like I say, this process is so in line with everything humanity knows that it has to be right. There's not a single expert in the world who will kind of just disagree with this in any foundational way. It's the most beautiful summary we have. And although there may be a few little sentences here or there that can be added or subtracted or modified, it's foundationally really, really solid as a path to nirvana. Okay, so this first image here is a scale. And on the one hand, we have naturally happy, balanced, wonderful people. In life, there's sort of a bell curve or a sine wave, and some people are just lucky to be in that top 10 or 5%, and everything just goes well for those people. They have charisma, they've got motivation, they've got confidence, uh, they've got the purpose, everything just falls into place for these people, and they're just powerful. Now, most people have to occupy that lower part in the sine wave curve. And the reason that we end up feeling a kind of enlightenment feeling, that sense of an overwhelm of liberation and relief, is because when we transition quickly from somewhere down here right up into near the top, well, that's that thing of, wow, everything has changed now. Okay? So that's how that kind of works. This is where we all want to be. Right in the middle, relaxedly, right in the middle. When we're in the middle here, the doors are all open. Beyond those doors are more doors and opportunities, and it's just your best life. If you start from this position at 20 years of old, 20 years of age, you will have a most remarkable life in the way that you want it to be. Okay? When we're here, we have these attributes. We're full of love, inspiration, curiosity, motivation, connection, and enjoyment. This is the enlightened position. It's natural wellness. We're living in a world of love. Now, here's the problem. Most of us and society is all living somewhere down here. That is, we've become disheartened. And we're going to go talk about how that happened in a second. We've labeled this disheartened state as depression, and it's living in the world of fear. It's a result of our fear program having changed the way we think and act. And when we become disheartened, and we are in a world of fear, we have the attributes of anger and suspicion, skepticism, cynicism, and reclusiveness. We're not happy people, and we like to close the doors around us so that we can find comfort scrolling on our phones and doing something which is really just not living your best life. So that this diagram here simplifies the current situation in a really basic, good way, strong way. It's not like a trivial way, okay? We're going to be moving people and society from here across to here. Now, the reason we don't want to be up to here is that's for specialists only, okay? In all things, there are specialists, are there not? Musical people can go there on the musical scale. Mathematical people can go up to there in the knowledge of mathematics. So yogis, priests, therapists, people who are right into consciousness, some of them will be called to try and explore what happens when you really become aware, like permanently. And that's when you have this thing of sitting on a hill, answering wonderful questions and always being right. But this is not for most of us. Most of us want to exist right here. This is the world of real joy and happiness and bliss, of just accepting ourselves, having no shame, no guilt, confidence, and living in a loving way so that everything always turns out wonderfully. Now, so that's that diagram. So this one is to say that none of us had any choice but to be hurt, because we're born and then we're in life. We haven't got the opportunity to have a higher awareness. And some people never get their higher awareness. But when we're in here, we can only react to whatever the world presents to us. And a lot of the time, it's going to be unexpected, unwanted. We're going to feel fear, and we're going to respond somehow by closing up or getting angry, or we're going to react. Yeah. It's like being a mouse in a maze. You're just hoping there's going to be an open door somewhere, into a nice place. And when we're in here, we change. Our program, we overwrite, or we write for the first time our program on how to behave and how to respond to different things. Now, people who are very lucky in the past had a know thyself moment. And when you have this moment, it's like having an overview of everything that's happened up till now. And you get to realize that, well, yeah, a lot of bad things happened, but on the other hand, also, a lot of it happened because of my own bad behavior or my own lack of knowledge. So by gaining the knowledge to understand this period of our lives, we get so close to that sense of nirvana that we're able to say, you know what, I'm just going to let that go. I feel like it's going to be intuitively good for me to just let that stuff go. And so we're going to end up doing more than just forgiveness, but we end up forgiving ourselves and everybody else, and to say, I'm going to start now. And when you restart, now you have the option of living this way. And so you can run this love program concurrently with your current autopilot. And you'll find that when you check with your inner CEO, the higher awareness, that the answer that one gives is always the right answer. And so you try it, and it always works. You try it some more, it works brilliantly. You end up deciding, yeah, this is the way to be. And that's when you end up having that revelation, that feeling of liberation and relief, because you're no longer drowning in here anymore. It's like suddenly now you know how to swim, and you're happily swimming wherever you like. Okay, I've got the clover here. Because in a field of clover, normally they're all working at 100%, aren't they? They're thriving. And there's no reason why humans also can't thrive. We can't say that we, in our societies around the world today, are working at 100% or anywhere near it. And that's what we're fixing with this, a way to be. We've done the first diagram in a way to be. That's quite a thing. There's only 3 left. One of the reasons that I know that this is just right is because nobody gets left behind. I call this the Jesus diagram. I call this the Buddha diagram. And the reason this is the Jesus diagram is because it says we are love before anything else. So I've mentioned before, very soon, I've got it written down here a little as well, but very soon, religion is going to voluntarily, willingly change the way it does talk about Jesus. We're going to focus now on the words of Jesus rather than the stories about Jesus, because those stories are mystical and they belong to that period 2,000 years ago. It's no longer relevant to today. Um, so that will become just correct. It'll mean that the doors around churches will become suddenly more open, because if you have to walk through a door and in order to walk through it, you have to accept that somebody came back from the dead and walked on water. In the modern world, that's a difficult thing to ask, and it's really not a sensible thing for anybody to walk in that door. So, but that's a hangover from history. In the end, we're going to just accept that that's had to happen up to this point. All of that stuff had to happen that way because it did. But now we're going to have the option and we're going to address it and we're going to make the right choices so that we have unity and can go on forward into the future with our hearts open and protected, and just we ourselves will be organized in a way where we can do the life that we know is possible for humanity. Um, so we get born. We get back up to here. We get born, and then we're hit with the fear program, which is fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. But we're going to add a word, formulate. It's crazy, isn't it? But just by adding the word formulate and saying humans always use that word, it's going to change the world. Because we can teach this in schools. And it's not to say that we'll always be faultless and not react. But it does mean that when we react, we'll know, hang on, this is not right. I've got to use formulate, so I'm going to immediately apologize for having reacted first of all. I'm sorry I reacted, that was my fault. And then we can think of, okay, when I don't feel so triggered, then I'll process that stuff and I'll get back to those people if I need to. And everything will become good. But even by just apologizing for having reacted, you're likely to get a big handshake from any men present and a big cuddle from any women present, because ultimately it's saying you're on the side of the human heart. And that's the side that we will all be championing from this point onward. So it'll become normal to carry zero victimology and to stand up straight and have that as a point of pride, you see. It's going to be our identity to just be love and not put up with any of the fear program, because those are all false flags, and they typically just close all the doors. Not typically, always. They close doors around us. The best options immediately disappear. And the more one carries on, the more doors close. Okay? This is just a fact, and we can see it in reality TV all the time. We're always yelling at the screen, just relax, please, please, just relax. Everything's going to be fantastic if you do that. So, like, the data is in, it's very clear. It's very, very clear. So here on the Buddhist diagram, we're talking about the ego. On the first one, there's a bulb here, and the light is shining fully through it. But this is theoretical only because, as we talked about just before, nobody had any choice but to be hurt and to be in life without the opportunity to see it from any other way. So here's a 10-year-old person who's in life, and Isn't it true that when somebody is 4 years old, they are glowing? They are the most beautiful little humans because they have their consciousness. They can speak, so we know what's going on in their minds. They've developed their beginnings of their personality. They're running around. They're just growing. They're happy, possibly because they're learning so much. They're growing. Growth is happiness. And at that age, they are just divine. But by 10 years old, they've become more sublime, more quiet, haven't they? And that's because they've run into a few walls and they now have sensitivities, and the light is just less now. They've become somewhat disheartened. They've they've just had immediate experiences, but by 20 years old, now these people have seen the news and they see that wars are still going on. I mean, now we're really confused, right? Why are there wars still going on? And as well as that, the social scene has started, and there's much pain to be had there if one isn't working with a heart of love. So you can see by this stage at year 20, the light is very dim, and this represents depression generally. So the goal is to clean the bulb. We can, by cleaning the bulb, we still have all our past. It's not that we forget our past or want to forget it, because part of our past is also all the good things that happened, right? The sine wave, lots of great things and a lot of things that make us who we are. But the bad things, we want those to be filed away in a way that we don't trigger on them anymore, so that we can remove that fear program, right? We just want to be full beam love. And that's going to happen when we use love to heal ourselves using the Kfag model: kindness, forgiveness, acceptance, and gratitude. It cleans the bulb, allows all the love to shine through, and we're no longer triggering off our earlier experiences. Oh, good. So that's what we're going to do next. We're up to the Kfag model. I might take a little break because this will take a little while. So this is something that, the way that I came up with this is that I spent a long time taking notes, and they were notes taken from great podcasts around the world and all the greatest thinkers of the world, psychologists, scientists, therapists, everybody who's a thought leader in how to be, gurus. And by the time I had this massive digital notes, I needed to organize them. And I noticed that you could put them all into these basic categories. There's gratitude, there's forgiveness. These were clearly important things. And foundationally, they all found their way into these groups: kindness, forgiveness, acceptance, and gratitude. In fact, I recall the word acceptance, I was tossing up whether to make that calm, but I feel happy with having chosen acceptance. So ultimately, everything that I'd learnt was able to fall into these things, and I recognized those as foundationally just love. That later on connected with the whole love universe type idea when that kind of fell into place. All right, so the model itself shows our autopilot and our CEO, our higher awareness. I've got a different way of talking about those now, but I'll talk about that in the next on the next sheet that we do. In the meantime, sometimes it's useful to think of the autopilot as the inner child when you go back in history, and sometimes the CEO then as the new wise adult who now knows about the world. And so we can work with our inner child and fix things, and then take over control, and live the life exactly how we would like it to be. That sort of thing. All right. Because I didn't know anything about the subconscious, I figured let's just put all love in there. All right, so in creating this page, I've added these small images to remind us what we're doing here. And the objective is to understand our past and to deal with everything to do with reprocessing our information, the way the stories that we hold, and how we're going to see them in a new way with our higher awareness, and then be able to put them, file them away in their own little rooms. And then I say we gently close the door on those rooms because we've processed those thoughts and we feel like, okay, I feel like I'm no longer going to be affected by those things. And then perhaps a week later, one of those ideas may come out of that room and you notice it again in your mind and you think, oh, but I've already processed that. And so when it's come out, it's only 50% intensity. So we just put it back in its room. We process it again because we're still carrying this identity of love within us, the Kfag model. So we can easily just go through the process again and we just put it back in its room. This can be while you're driving down the road or doing the dishes. You see, we carry this healing sense of love with us everywhere we go. And then possibly another week or two might go by and it could come out again, but this time only 10%. Now it's just annoying. Put it back in, gently close the door. And we always do that, gently closing the door, because we refuse to be living in the fear zone. It's just not what we're going to do. So we do everything in a nice, relaxed way. I'll start reading this. Plan for your reset ritual to be special and beautiful. It really is a moment in your life. You're creating for yourself this know thyself moment. It's not something you really want to just rush and say, oh, now everything's going to change. But rather, it's something spiritual. It's the meaning of your life. So you don't want to rush it or intellectualize it. You really need to do this thing in a way which has meaning for you. So that's why we call it a ritual, and that's why I would suggest you do this in a place that's special for you, where however that is. It could be a nice little place you've built in your garden. It could be just quietly in your room. It could be walking down a sports field, just looking at the grass, going back and forth. I typically tend to do my thinking when I'm walking, but you can also just sit down and meditate. You could go into a church and get into prayer mode. All of these ways of becoming, of meeting ourselves, of quietening everything down and getting out of our minds to some extent and feeling who we are and what's going on. Therapy is just like that as well, except that you're paying somebody trustworthy and that you feel safe with to bring you into that place, because you don't do that yourself. So clearly, the Kfag model is the way to do it, because once we have this knowledge of what we're doing in there, we don't really need anybody to lead us to do that, because we know our minds better than anybody. We know the little hiding places. We know what our issues are. So consequently, I fully expect everybody to understand and trust that this is the ultimate way to get our past processed in a fashion that no longer affects us, that we feel like the it's all on our side to win this game, that it's an unbalanced competition and that we will individually all win against our past. Okay, so we're planning for our reset ritual to be special and beautiful. Take a weekend to enjoy having this experience. Do not just intellectualize it. So yeah, you have to get inside yourself. Do that in the manner that suits you best. Each block requires a half-hour minimum of focused, calm thought. Because it takes 10 minutes, doesn't it, to get into any zone. If you're at a party, it takes 10 minutes to relax into the energy of the room. If you need to do housework, it takes 10 minutes to get into the zone and then you're happy doing housework. Uh, Use a favorite self-reflective, quiet, inspirational place or create one specially. See, as long as it's not a distracting place, you can go for a walk anywhere, but as long as you are able to focus in on yourself rather than be distracted by all the entertainment and the things that you can see. You get the picture. Um, Note that all blocks go both ways, e.g., be kind to yourself as well as others. There's a lot in that. When we do kindness, for instance, we think about kindness and how it makes everything in your life work. And you'll notice the examples of people that you've met who are kind, all the experiences of kindness you have. But then you're also not just recognizing the power of kindness, but you're deciding and making that decision. I'm going to be kind, first of all, to myself. That is, I'm going to have patience and I'm going to stay calm. I'm going to get out of my head somewhat. Instead of worrying and having all of that stuff going on, I'm just going to start relaxing. I'm going to find who I am and then begin expressing again. Um, but we're not doing the kindness block yet. I'm still just reading through this front part. Uh, yeah, so the both ways thing is a very powerful aspect of doing the Kfag model. Each of those blocks goes both ways. Installing the Kfag model is an experience you will treasure for life. You may expect to cry a few times. So you'll know when you're doing it right, when you engage your emotions, okay? It might be fine to cry. It might be fine, though, to cry from happiness. It's going to be emotional if you're doing it right, or get as emotional as you can. Find that seat of where you are. After restoring your base identity, the Kfag model remains, allowing you to calmly process any new or hidden issues. That's that thing where we just carry this identity of love with us, um, and it continually keeps solving anything that comes up. It's just a no-brainer, really. Uh, it really becomes it's a clarification of who you are, who we all are. We all have such different experiences, don't we? But deep in our foundation, we're exactly the same. That's why all our movies are about love, our poems, our songs. Everything we do is about love. When a person dies, we speak about the things they loved and how we loved them. All of these things. It's just the core of what it is to be human when we have this higher awareness that we can live this way. Right, yeah, so it should be a no-brainer that this is something everybody should do for themselves. We don't need a therapist really to do this, although that might be something later on. Once the world has processed their issues, and once we have this language of understanding our identity, there could be further things where therapists can really optimize from that healthy start point. Okay, so it is all going to change the world. This is going to change the way everything happens to do with well-being, which is pretty darn remarkable. So let's start then. The kindness block. So I say you can install the whole model, let's say in a weekend, but you don't want to do it all at once. It's just too much mental effort. So over the course of a lovely weekend, you might say on a Saturday morning, oh, I'm going to install the kindness block. And so you know how you're going to do it. You've got it all sorted out. You go and do it, and as I described before, you basically think about kindness for a whole half hour. In the course of doing that, in all the ways that you think, wow, yeah, those people that exhibited kindness and how I remember them and how I miss them, all of these things, we start to just make our commitment, our connection to foundational human attributes. After the first 10 minutes, when you're in the zone, now you've done 20 minutes that are focusing on the deep aspects of kindness, ones where you've also experienced things that have been unkind, and you're going through your whole experience. This is now a summary of all of your life in this moment. And at some point, you just absolutely understand that kindness is some kind of magic superpower. And you decide, for myself, I absolutely am ready to commit to kindness. In fact, at this stage of the thought process, this half hour that you're doing, you probably absolutely have a heart full of love. When you've got that point going where you're just ready, when you're just ready to commit to kindness, to make a personal commitment and say, this is a superpower I want, this is who I am, I'm not going to change this ever, that's when you're going to lift that block up and metaphorically put it into your mind and make your commitment to it. Now, it's not to say that you've been unkind on purpose ever. Hopefully, you never have. But all the things that happened in the past were a reaction to other things. It's a bit of a mess. And we can take some of the responsibility ourselves. We can see that some of the responsibility lays with others. But with this wide view of it all, we can say, well, now we're getting into forgiveness though, but we can say that um, kindness is the thing that everybody welcomes. Shall we put it that way? I'll just read this thing now just to make sure I've hit all the main things. Think deeply about your experiences of kindness. Commit to being kind and patient with yourself and others. Ultimately, it's a rule of do no harm. Be kind to the environment. So we do want to include the earth. That's sensible. When you feel deep, calm love, accept this gold block by permanently laying it inside your consciousness. Be free then from worrying about what other people think. That's a big one. In the manner that we behave, it's clear sometimes we can meet people and they're just too concerned with what everybody else is thinking. They're fawning a lot. They're just trying to be loved in everything that they do. And that's not necessarily the most attractive way to be. Um, so ultimately, you just want to own this goodness, this allegiance to kindness, so that you don't have to think about what other people are thinking about you. You just start to own yourself. So you're calming your mind. This is already, in so many ways, this is healing you. Just doing this one thing. It's giving you the permission to become calmer, to think your own thoughts rather than worrying about what's going on all the time around you. Um, when you have got this self-kindness and this commitment to kindness done, you can welcome back self-compassion because that's what it is. Now you're going to be kind to yourself as well. It's a superpower when you do it. That simply means having that patience and accepting that calm and accepting the good and the bad of whatever the situation is that you're in right now, but that using kindness, it's going to help you make every day better from this point on. Okay, so then you can go home after that, and you'll keep thinking about it all weekend long, I would expect. But in the afternoon, Saturday afternoon, perhaps you might say, okay, well, I've got the energy now. I'm going to go and do the forgiveness block. So off you go again, or to your special place, and I'll read it. Forgive yourself and others for everything, as we have all just been doing our best to cope with our struggles. It's that mouse in the maze type thing. Become okay with the confusion you suffered as it led to who you are today. Use the formulate option to create a life path of your own choosing. So we're always going to use that formulate. We're not going to put up with this reaction stuff because it closes all the doors so fast. It's crazy. And it's so obvious. You just got to watch that reality TV. I'm not kidding. You have to watch the reality TV where relationships are the subject and just make a mental note. What happened before? What happened next? This reaction began. What's the result? It's 100% clear. There's no advantage to reacting in a fearful way. Just use formulate. stay calm, say your piece, say it in a sensible way and not a way that's going to cause a reaction either. When we stay away from fear, our lives become kind of golden. Everything just works. Um, and yeah, so you're looking back again over that past life, and you can see that half the time it's your own behavior that caused everything to not progress or to cause everything to just not be as good as it might have been. Not all, but a good deal. So rather than picking and choosing, it's just best to give the whole thing a blanket, I'm over it. It had to happen that way. It just had to happen. Nobody had a choice. We were all in the game. We couldn't see that we had a choice. But now we're at this know thyself moment. Now we're going to go through the portal to enlightenment. We can say, and we want to say as well, you know what? I'm okay. I'm actually okay. I'm going to put all that stuff in those rooms, gently close the door on all of those wee things that continuously bugged us in the past, and we're going to legitimately forgive and allow it all to be, because today it's a beautiful day, and this is the first day of the rest of my life, in a sense. It's that sense of, all right, this is a fresh start, which you're giving to yourself in a really, really strong and powerful way. So that's forgiveness. It says at the end there, now we'll get on to the very traumatic things that one would have to deal with in doing the forgiveness block next, because that happens in acceptance. Uh, Become okay with the confusion you suffered as it led to who you are today. Use the formulate option to create a life path of your own choosing, maintaining zero victimology. That's a key word there. Maintain zero victimology. Once you've done this, you want to wear that like a badge. Zero victimology. Because ultimately, when you've done this process, you are now a different human being. And as that human being, and because you've watched the reality shows or you're about to and all that sort of thing, you're going to see that this is a new path. This is a different way to be. All right. This is what we're studying, right? It's called Our Way to Be. And it's clearly the way that's advantageous in every sense to you and your life and the life of your family and community. Um, so zero victimology is a point of pride within a person. So later, it's not to say that you'll never react. We're all human, so we're going to, in moments of weakness and stress, we might just react. But hopefully, by that stage, we're so okay with everything that if we do react, we can pick it up really fast and drop it immediately and say, oops, sorry, that was a reaction. Apologies from my part because that was my fault. And then you just wait till you just say something sensible and get back to them when the vibe has fallen, that reactive vibe. So the way one experiences this, it's not that you don't feel it in your energy. We call that somebody disrupts your energy. Energy is love, so it's your love field as well. So, but if your energy is disrupted, it's not that that never happens. It certainly can and does, especially with close relationships and things like that. But we at least are aware of it, and so we don't fan the flames. When we engage with those reactions, that's when it grows like a fire and it just starts burning down your life. So, although those little hotspots happen, we just leave them alone and they will disappear on their own really fast. If you do fan the flame, that hotspot could go on for months and years and years and years and years, ruined relationships. Everything can go wrong. So, we simply don't touch those things. We just use formulate. Everything that's fabulous in our life, we welcome it all in and experience it and engage with it, and we push it forward and we maximize it and have fun. But any of those things which lead us to feel pain, we simply just draw a line and say, no, not for me. Okay, so that's that. And it's something you can do, I guess, is what I'm saying. It's a superpower. Once you're used to this idea, and it really just comes from your higher awareness, you just, as I say, you can see that that was a way to lose yourself, and that way in the past of earlier behaviors and things like that, and earlier interpretations of everything that happened. Okay, so lay the block when ready, when you feel like you'd be really proud of yourself to have zero victimology. And then welcome back self-expression. So without fear, you see, our autopilot is also our creative self. When we're not having to formally think about things, that's when we're in flow. So, what am I saying here? So you can welcome back self-expression. All your creative work is going to be done while you're in that flow. When you don't have fear, when your heart is full of love, and you have all the goodness from your past that informs this creative thing, whether it's in music or whatever it is, but that's where you can just be in flow, and your CEO can then pick out the things that really work and say, oh, that's one I'm going to write down because that's something I'm looking for. Um, so that's how that works. When you forgive other people and yourself, now you become okay to be creative and expressive and make errors. Maybe it's a bad idea that I grew this dark beard. I don't think so at the moment, but you're just happy to try things. Okay? It's it's just freeing. You get to be you in a happy way, and you get to try out all sorts of things in this wonderful life. All right. So now the next one is acceptance. And acceptance is fabulous, but it does have a thing because, so we've just done the big forgiveness block, and you'll have put that in. Now, so on Sunday morning, perhaps you'll think, okay, let's do the acceptance block. Now, for people who have had really intense trauma, they are certainly going to be in a position where they're not going to feel like I can forgive the perpetrator. And in those sort of situations, I think the path is something like this, and you'll have to figure out your own path. But I think this is a useful one. Wherever you were, if you weren't sitting there and somebody else was sitting there, then that thing would have happened to them. And if that person wasn't sitting there and it was somebody else sitting there, it would have happened to that person. In that sense, you can feel like, you know what, I'm not really the victim. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I didn't know what was going on. So I really had nothing, no part of me was in this situation, really. It was just a weird thing that happened. And in that sense, perhaps I can legitimately say, I'm not a victim of that. It was just an experience that I had. And that would be sensible to cut it off just at the experience level and say, okay, I went through that thing. It was not good. It was terrible, but it's just an experience I had, and I'm not going to let it affect me anymore. It's not my thing. It's somebody else's thing. And in that sense, finding that place where you can let that sort of thing go is really important. And then you can say to anybody else who also knows the story, possibly, you know what? I've put that thing away. I've done the Kfag model. I've processed it, and I'm good. So that way you can end the story for all of your friends as well, because you guys are the only ones that are still carrying this narrative forward into the continuing universe. So it's just a wonderful thing to be able to say, I'm just going to take that as an experience I had, and I'm just refusing to give any more of myself towards that bad end. And then close the narrative, close the door on it, and say, I'm okay. And if the door opens again, Maybe next time it still comes back at 80% because it was such a bad thing. Uh, I'm good. I can think about it again. I can see, yeah, and you run that through. Eventually, you're building these neural pathways each time. I think even when you sleep, the Kfag model works. I think once you've built this structure that's reliable and true about who you are, even when you sleep and in your dreams, it's going to have an effect because it's so deep. It's in your core. So that's an important part of acceptance, to find that way where you can gently keep closing the door on anything that keeps happening, and it just doesn't panic you because each time it comes back less scary until it's really just annoying, and then, you know. So then you're kind of solved. Okay, so I'm going to read this now because I might have, well, I haven't really done it apart from the trauma thing. Accept the challenges of your looks and situation, refusing to be jealous. I usually say at this point that if you're not good looking, then that's tough. That can be a bumpy road. But equally, if you are good looking, that can be tough. That's a bumpy road. Everybody wants a piece of you. Who do you trust? Who? It's like you're living in a different kind of reality, no matter what your situation is. Your situation is your own. And the Asian people I've heard to do with Buddhism and those sorts of Eastern belief systems, I've heard them refer to this sort of thing as you're born with a certain vehicle, and it's your job, it's your challenge to acquit yourself in a beautiful way with the vehicle you've been given. So, no matter what your challenge is, whatever the kind of challenge it is, that's your job, is to do it with dignity, with pride, and acceptance. This is just part of acceptance. This is the thing I'm doing in this lifetime. But the biggest thing you'll be doing for sure is knowing thyself. So that's your doorway into bliss in every way. Um, refusing to be jealous. Deep traumas are filed away here as experience only events. We've done that. Know that others have their own confusing paths to solve. So, for sure, there are going to be people that you see out there that aren't behaving the right way. And we know there's no way you can just immediately just fix them by pointing it out. This is why the Kfag model is very, very important. And that's why it's important for it to become pervasive in education around the whole world. That once we understand this truth, which is not my truth, it's not what I've invented, it's foundational human knowledge. And when we apply these ideas, we just all become well. And in the future, we'll see some people probably acting out, but then we'll know they've got a real psychological issue, because you don't have to memorize any of this. This is all who we are, you see. So there's no reason for anybody to somehow avoid it. There'll be so many stories about people having their revelation experiences that nobody will be scared of doing it. It just is the right way to go. Yeah, but in the meantime, though, everybody's running doing the path in their own, uh, in their own time. Once you have had this know thyself moment, though, once you're actually doing it, another interesting thing is that it doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. If you're in a room and you're talking to somebody who's been running this method one way or another for 20 years, let's say, a real expert, shall we say, it doesn't matter because it's so simple. If you're doing it, you're doing it. You see what I mean? So it's not a competition either. It's just everything is in this frame of the universe. Is it now? Yeah? So it's a really amazing thing. Yeah. Okay. Welcome back, calm and confidence when we accept ourselves. All of this is heading towards giving ourselves the permission to get out of our heads much more, to slow ourselves down, to get calm and not be anxious about our situation, so that we can just live each day and do the next right thing, which we'll cover in the next image. So the last thing on this page then is the gratitude block. And that's, let's say, Sunday afternoon. Now you're all energized again and you want to set the gratitude block down. So you go for your walk again, spend half an hour thinking about the things that you should be thinking about and how lucky you are. Just know your top 3 reasons which are unquestionable about how lucky you are to be here right now in the situation you're in. And also keep in mind now the power you have to make things better and better and better. And that's just going to be an exponential curve, really. In my own experience, I joined Toastmasters, for instance, last December. It's May, June now, starting to become the end of May. And I found, with my strong mindset that I've been developing over the last few years, that I still did have to start from, like, here I am trying to talk to a crowd, and I've never done it before. And so I had to start from where I was. But I found that my progress has been really quick, at least in my own mind. I'm very, very proud of my progress and feel like that's possibly the pattern, that we still have to start from where we were, but that the acceleration into positive and results, areas of results, of getting good results, is, it's just all starts coming. It all starts happening. Okay, let's see. Know why you are very lucky. Be grateful for the company of others. Enjoy your positivity and your desire to generally be helpful. Is that just general optimism and positivity? This is just natural for a happy person, right? This is why everybody enjoys meeting happy people and happy to help happy people as well, because it's just that energy, that love energy. We just like to be near it. Look after your body, posture, presentation, and habits. So there's a lot to assess there. It's fun. So all of the ways that you have been up to this point, you can assess those and think, why was I dressing so shabbily? Or why was I over talking? Or why was I not talking enough? And you can gradually find space to say, right, I'm not going to put up with that. And I'm going to push myself to correct those things. In the same way as learning the Toastmasters, you have to start from where you're at, but your progress is going to go really fast and you're going to be able to get excited by going further. Yeah? Okay. And there's so much, yeah, your body, your posture, your presentation, your habits. It's so much fun. That's kind of the dance of life I'm going to talk about soon. Both work-wise and socially, learn what works and just do that. So what works is truth. We're going to learn that also in step 2. Lay the block when you are ready. Welcome back inner joy. So when you're focusing on your gratitude, when you won't allow yourself to stray too much from your understanding of why you are so lucky and why you're going to enjoy this next part of your life, well, that inner joy is right there. And well, we're going to strengthen all of this. So that's by doing the next part. But this is step 1. This is the Kfag model. We spend a weekend installing it, and then we proudly stand up straight and say, okay, I'm carrying 0 victimology. If it appears again, I'll just put it back in this little room. And now, with all of the attributes that you'll have by having processed your past, you are going to be well poised to deal with any other things, like whether it's eating habits, whether it's work habits, whether it's social habits, you now stand a really good chance of actually being able to achieve those things that you might have worked on in the past, but because of all that confusion that you were still carrying with you, you found it difficult. Okay, well, we're up to here now. This is step 2, communication recovery. So this is the concept here is simply that because of all of our experiences in our past and the traumas we faced and the hurt we felt, we've shrunken ourselves away. And we've become a certain way as well, and it's not necessarily the best way to be. I, for instance, was originally called shy, but then I became an over talker. Um, and neither of those two things are, well, both of them are a result of the fear program, anxiety, depression. Um, and so it's because I inhabit this consciousness, I can track those things and I can say, oh, all right. So what are the great ways to communicate? What is rapport? I remember years and years ago when this whole thing started, I remember having a kind of revelation and walking around in my living room with my arms out going, rapport, rapport is everything. And it was really overwhelming. I thought, rapport, what is this word? And I've decided I'm going to study rapport. And that was kind of like the beginning of the whole thing for me. I was just intensely interested in realizing that the word rapport was like holding the golden goose. Okay, so in communication recovery, we're basically just going to consult the best communicators in the world and find out what the truth is, what works. And then we can compare their truths to how we are being, and we can tilt our autopilot toward that truth. Or possibly we can make the change really fast. Um, but at least we're aware of the truth, and our CEO, our higher awareness, will be able to assess us after we've just spent half an hour talking to people. We'll be able to say, think, oh, did I do well there, or did I end up over talking and not listening correctly and blah, blah, blah. By having our higher awareness, we're not going to be telling ourselves off when we stray off the golden path, as it were. And we're not going to tell off those other people for having walked away and not being interested anymore, because we understand it was our fault. I exhibited um, attributes which aren't attractive over talking, right? So then it's there's no blame, you see. Once we've done the Kfag model, we're past this point of having expectations and blaming and thinking bad thoughts. It's really just becomes fun. So it's like my higher awareness CEO will just say to myself, yeah, Eric, you did that badly. Let's go and find another person and practice some more. It just becomes your dance with yourself to just become that person that is inside you. But that, see, this is where I might talk about that thing. The autopilot is your original spirit, the way I think about it. So when you are young, how you're going to behave gets written out for the first time according to the experiences you have. So that's kind of like your original spirit. That's who you are because of the experiences you had. But of course, that original spirit has been dented and beaten up a bit because of the fear program by the things that have hurt us. So the CEO isn't so much a boss or a grown-up, an adult-child relationship. It's with the autopilot. It's more like your original spirit is the autopilot. That's your creative person, right? And it still somewhat has that playful childishness in it, because that's creativity. That's just exploring and finding out things and being excited and exuberant and everything. All those human attributes are in that original spirit. And it's just that your, what I've called CEO up till now, I tend to think now of as your spirit guide, because your spirit guide has now become informed about what is true about communication and about love and about forgiveness and all these things. And so your spirit guide is your consultant, your own personal consultant, to help your original spirit to have to see no roadblocks, to only have clear road ahead. Yeah? Is that a better way to describe it? It kind of explains a little bit why we tend to speak a little bit in baby language when we get intimate with people. It's our original spirit. Okay? I think that's a better way to think of it. So I'll chuck that in there. It's free. All right. Um, as children, I'm going to read now. This is step 2, communication recovery, and it's about increasing your charisma, developing charisma. As children, we learned a way to be by default. We will see here that for most of us, our default is kind of rubbish compared to what it can easily and quickly become. To stay strong in our self-communication and progress, we use a journal or a diary, see right-hand side. That's a kind of excerpt of what my diary might look like. But each of these lines are put in here on purpose for a thing, and I'm going to have to talk about each of those things before we finish this image. But again, it's nothing that you have to remember. There's nothing to learn here. It's just knowledge. Um, today, so it's two-way, right? It's that we're going to learn to communicate outside of ourselves, but also to communicate within ourselves and keep track of things. Because otherwise, all our great ideas, those good lines that you might think if you're a writer or whatever you're doing, there's going to be stuff that you need to write down before it just disappears and you get distracted and you never see those ideas again. Today, we can adopt the skills of the world's best communicators. Consider these people to be your personal guides. Absorb, absorb what they teach as universal truth. So this is like the bell curve this time. What they're teaching is the middle of the bell curve. So if we can get ourselves out from the edges of the bell curve somewhere into the middle, well, it's going to be, that's the path for your golden future, is to move into that middle part that works. We're going to use what works. Our spirit guide knows what that is once they've seen these videos. So what I'm about to read is on my website. I've picked 7 videos. The world's best communicators talking about communication or talking about becoming well. 7 that I think are just really important. And I suggest to everybody to watch each of those videos twice. That way you can get bored and say, I know this. And that's great, because that's where you want to be. This is now your spirit guide, knowing what's right, how to be in terms of communication. Now, your original spirit, your autopilot, needs to have the guidance of your spirit guide, because otherwise it will just keep doing the same old bad pattern where it comes to communication um, and all sorts of things. So your spirit guide is your corrective, is a corrective aspect to your spirit, and that's how everything is going to change. I recall, actually, yeah, it just reminds me of a thing that I know I didn't read. Part of the acceptance block was enjoy living in the moment in this world of love and being right about everything! Exclamation mark. I better explain that. Um, it, it relates to something I said earlier, I think. If you have 100 well-being experts and you ask them a question about motivation or creativity, they're all going to come up with a different answer. But when you work with love, when you work with this system of understanding who you are, and you're always just consulting that central path of pure love, you just don't have to ask 100 experts. There's no need. You know the answer. You're right down the middle of the tube. And so you just feel like, oh, okay, I know what's going on here. I know what the subtext is here. I see what's going on. It's plainly obvious. So that's kind of the feeling where you just feel like you know everything as a result of doing this process. It's kind of fun, and it's just an interesting thing that happens. Where did I get up to with your? Oh yeah, so I was talking about the videos on my website. That's cool. You go and watch those a couple of times. Make notes for sure in your journal. If there's anything that strikes you as being that's important, you got to write that stuff down. Um, with your updated understandings, your truths, you will be able to walk into any room with quiet swagger and omnipotence. Well, that's right. The room could be full of prime ministers, presidents, and billionaires, but in that moment also you're just all people, but they'll be interesting people because they've clearly done things in their life already. But foundationally, who we really are in the moment being with somebody is just being human. And there's no need for anybody who has a good heart to feel judged by anybody in any way at all. It's that acceptance. We all have different paths. It's okay to be excited to meet interesting people, but don't feel like it's terrible for you. You're observing, you're having this experience which is unique and it's only yours, and you just don't know what good is going to come from your life yourself. So there's no need to go, again, don't be jealous of other people. There's just no need. Be kind, be calm, and be yourself. All of these things add together to require so that you don't need to kind of say these things to yourself as you walk into a room like programming yourself on the spot, because you embody it every morning when you do your yoga, when you do your thing. It becomes part of who you are, and so you're able to relax and communicate with anybody. Okay, so the videos feature these people there. Then work on your most obvious weak points. That's what we talked about before. Find out ways to tilt your autopilot so that it becomes a fun thing to do. So that if you are weak in banter, let's say, relaxed conversation, then start watching some comedian podcasts, stand-up podcasts. Get into that vibe, start to find out where you are in that place. But also, it could be handy possibly for some people to watch a lot of history videos or science documentaries. Watch all of the ones made by Jim Al-Khalili because then you've got the foundations of science really perfectly in your mind. You can easily watch every one of them twice because it's so darn interesting, I find. um, but yeah, this is all going to help in your general knowledge, your conversation, your ability to stand there and feel like you know some stuff. Yeah. Okay. Know and appreciate where you came from and where you are now. This whole thing is really about that as well. It's not just your local thing, but it's the whole thing. Which culture do you belong to? What's been the history of that culture? What do you cling to as being important about that culture? And possibly, maybe, what's wrong with this culture? What's not going wrong? What's not helping me about it? So just have your idea. Find your way of being okay with everything and knowing that you're going to go forward in your own way, the best way that you know how. Last sentence: communication recovery and trying to stay present is the joy of our dance with life. So this saying comes from Alan Watts, who in the probably the late 60s or early 70s of last century explained that, particularly back then, all parts of our life seem to be in preparation for the next part. You're in primary school to be ready for school. You're in preschool to be ready for primary school to be ready for secondary, secondary to get a job, to then to become a manager or something. And it's like we're never good enough. It's like when is life supposed to happen? So Alan says that life is like music. It's a dance. We're supposed to be dancing while the music is playing. It's not a race to get to the end of the song. So this dance of life is that discussion between your CEO and your autopilot, which we now call possibly the spirit guide and our original spirits. Everything that goes wrong, we can laugh about it because we can see, you know, silly spirit guide, original spirit, keeps doing these silly things that don't work. Um, and so next time we're going to do a little better, or we're going to approach it from a slightly different angle, or try and be more aware in the moment is usually the answer. Is just to in those times, that's when you need to kick in and bring your more formal self in, possibly to patch over those parts where your original spirit would otherwise be not communicating well. And that's the dance of life. So that also is the end of step 2. Now, when a person has done both of these things, is there anything left to do? No, but maintain it. And that's step 3, maintenance. And we can call that joyfully living. Who doesn't want to do it? It starts, happiness is growth. We form a blissful view of our past, present, and future, which inspires a healthy morning routine. We relearn to stand up straight and dress well. Once you've processed your past and you can see you've assessed all the negative aspects of it, and you've gotten okay with that. You're actually bored with that stuff. But you've also got all the good stuff. And the fact that you've processed all that bad stuff, the fact that it's all organized now, you can look back and you can still wander in there, as your mind will do. You can't help but carry on referring to things of the past. But now you're no longer triggered. You've got it so organized. It's actually a nice place to be. It's not a bad place to be at all. In the present, because you've done this work, it's always a good place to be, because in any moment, the idea is to become aware. If you're not sure what's going on, just become aware. Get into your spirit guide mode, your CEO mode, and just calm down and formulate. The future, well, because we're going to be doing this journaling, you've already plotted out where you're going, what you're planning to do. Not really specifically, necessarily, but you know the general direction at the very least. And so you know that this is going to get better and better and better from here on, and effectively, you know. So by being joyful in your past, your present, and your future, there's no reason to not be joyful ever, unless you've got some really weird vibe going on, which can't even be true, because you've got it written in your journal that everything is going really well now. And it's literally true. In your most lucid moments, you're writing down, this is so exciting. This is whatever it is, whatever. You just know that you're still in that revelation experience where the liberation and relief type thing, the whole thing is an energized, forward moving, positive thing. So anytime something messes up that vibe, you don't have to trust it. It's not true. It's it might be okay, it's a red flag, but it's not true, is the point. So you don't believe it. So you don't react to it because it's not even true. It's a story that my brain wants to put into something, but I know that it's not true. It's just the fear program trying to make me react. But as an aware human being, that's going to be very, very rare. And if it happens, it's going to get shut down nice and quietly, nice and relaxedly every time. So living purposefully, but let's get back to this. Step 3, maintenance, living, joyfully living. We're doing this. We've inspired a healthy morning routine. So, yeah, maintenance means when you wake up in the morning, you've probably just had a bad dream of something or a confusing dream. Most dreams aren't like bliss. And as a consequence of that, you'll have some weird chemicals running through your bloodstream, the ones that make you stressed or confused, possibly. But no matter what you're going to do first is make your bed. That's a good Hare Krishna Buddhist type of practice. And it's sort of, it works insofar as it gives you your first success of the day. But also it's a moment of respect because this is where you're going to lay your head tonight as well. It's where you've just gotten up from. So there's a kind of a very nice aspect to making your bed. We don't need to do it perfectly. The whole objective of all of this thing is not to be too fastidious and perfect about everything, but just calmly and nicely make your bed a little bit. Then you want to get your yoga going because you do need to keep your body moving, right? You don't want to become all stuck together. And then because of our lifestyles, we may need to do some weights, whatever you feel like you need to do. And then I do a bit of that, and then I do some jogging on the spot for 10 minutes, watching something on the computer, something enjoyable. And that's the equivalent of running a kilometer, I find, outside. Now, at that point, I'll just say, at that at that point, I start to get a bit hot and sweaty, or I will get sweaty if I don't do something. So I get in a cold pool, if it's summertime and there's a cold pool outside, and then go and sit in that for a few minutes, or just get in the shower in cold water and breathe as you cover yourself in cold water to cool down your outside, so that in a few minutes, when your inner heat does reach the outside, it doesn't cause you to sweat. So that's what I do, and I'd recommend that. That's why there's a picture of a shower there and a tub. There's also a picture of a guy standing up against a wall. That's something Arnold Schwarzenegger told me. Um, it's just reminding your body of what your posture is. Uh, so while the jug is boiling, perhaps you can make it a regular practice to straighten yourself up again. It's part of just being aware. So in an aware moment, you can do some extra little exercises with a rubber ball, squeezing things, or you can straighten yourself up, but it's a permanent you living your best life. Yeah? Okay. Um, So that's just your morning setup. Once you've got so then you will have your breakfast and then you go and check on your journal, which has your to-do list and it's just has your identity written right there. Um, so you're just starting the day with the mindset that you are owning, the one that's real for you. Yeah? Not some random thing. I mean, you can imagine. Otherwise, the option is to just get up, go in the kitchen, and start thinking about something negative or arguing with somebody. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Of course, that's not a good option. Our purpose is one of service to others, generating enthusiasm and energy. Generally, that's true, isn't it? When we're helping people, when we feel like we're working with people, it's all just naturally fueling for the human spirit. We use thought curation to tilt our autopilot towards health and joy. It's a permanent thing. We're just keeping in touch with, and we can write it in our journal if we like. We can try and really keep in tabs with it. But really, there's a certain amount of the day that you want to put forward your thing in the world. For me, it's this thing right now, right? Um, but then there's also parts of the day where you just can't keep doing this. And you could, but then it's forcing you. You do want to live a relaxed, wonderful life as well. So there's going to be a portion of the day when you just need to think about other things. And then you can keep an eye on your mind and see what it's doing and think, is that much fun? No. So we start curating our own thoughts, and focusing on the things that really do give us pleasure, either just for entertainment purposes or however it is, relaxation of any kind. We want to do that sort of thing. And then once we've had that, we can get back into a creative zone and start thinking about your work type things again. Um, but you're managing every aspect about what it is to be you, not in a way where it's another job, because this is a pleasure. You're just stopping yourself from just being a free floating boat that's going nowhere, you know? Um, we invent compelling distractions to stop anxiety, the gift technique. So that is when we notice that, oh, something has happened and now, oh, I'm going to think about it all the time. And an easy example is when my car broke down. I had to get it towed away from the middle of town because it wouldn't start. And I was worried about that because I knew it was going to cost a bit and I didn't know. It was all just out of my sphere of knowledge. But I knew that in the end it would get fixed and it would take probably a few weeks. And I didn't want to have to think about how I don't have this car for 3 whole weeks. That wouldn't help anything. And I was able to function without the car, so I knew it wasn't a big deal. So then I just had to stop thinking about the darn car. So what I did was what I called a gift technique. I don't know, it's very NLP in its kind of thing. Um, but ultimately, a GIF is a very short video, like 2 seconds long. I thought, how good a video can I conjure up in my mind in a moment's notice and then have that play? And only 2 seconds was about as much as I could manage. So I thought, for the GIF technique, whenever I think about the car, I'm just going to trigger that movie. And the content of the movie, we want it to be as distracting as possible. For a guy, that's usually something sexy. But for a girl, that could be something wonderful. Whatever it is that really would just make you smile and distract you entirely from that thought that you're trying to avoid, you're just going to allow that to happen. Um, the thought may come back immediately, but then I also programmed into my brain at the same time. And when I say programmed, I'm just thinking that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to change the video very slightly so that it's entertaining slightly differently this time. The process basically worked. So 3 weeks later, when I got the car back, I realized, hey, I got through this whole thing and it didn't stress me a single bit. In fact, I had a nice enough time finding out about the gift technique, how that works, and I can use that anytime. So that's what the gift technique is. It's just distracting yourself in a really effective way and an enjoyable way so that you can curate again what you allow in. If it's not going to be helpful, curate it out of there using the gift technique. We aim for anti-fundamentalism, perfectionism, and simplicity. Anti-fundamentalism is just basically, if we have too tight a borders of what we allow and don't allow, then we can't grow. You need to keep things fuzzy, even though you're quite sure about where you are and how you're operating. You want to keep things a little bit fuzzy so that you can push it a little bit just to check that you're happy with where you're at. Um, Anti-perfectionism is simply that thing of not using perfectionism as an intellectual distraction to, stop yourself from going ahead and doing the next right thing. So yeah, watch out for those sorts of things because they can lead to procrastination and things like that. And keeping things simple is a bit of a no-brainer. If you have too many things going on in your life, it's going to be harder to deal and it's going to be harder to stay calm, isn't it? So simplicity is a hallmark of wise people. We try to contribute positively to the daily life around us. It's kind of a no-brainer, isn't it? Wherever you turn up, just try and be helpful. Don't get in anybody's way, for sure. Um, yeah, you're going there for a reason, to add your good energy. We watch out for unavoidable compounding stress levels to keep out of trouble. That's the interesting thing. A year ago, I did react and I lost my myself for a second and did some yelling, and then quickly realized it. And so I apologized and stuff. But then when I thought about it, I realized, hey, it's because of that thing. In the morning, there was something very frustrating. It was sewing, of all things. I was trying to sew something because I'd learnt to sew, and it was not going right. It was just not going right at all. And so I was really quite stressed, but it got me quite upset. And it was very frustrating. And then another thing happened, which was another level of frustration, but to do with something else. And then another thing happened, which then triggered me. And then I lost it for a second. So that's why that sentence is there. When you're feeling stressed, just be a little careful. Tell your own spirit guide. When you're stressed, take a wee rest. It's okay to take a wee rest sometimes. And then we finish this part here by saying, we then slow ourselves down, remembering to experience every perfect moment. It's really interesting to slow yourself down and you realize how fast you're doing everything. Even walking out there and turning the water off there's some horses in the paddock down the back there, and I turn the water on if their tank is too low. And I'm walking out there. It's again, when I'm walking is when I think. Going outside is when I start to become myself again, or I have a visit with myself. And then I immediately notice that I'm kind of walking really fast. And I think, just slow down, Eric. And so I just start slowing right down. And I realize, yeah, well, there is no race here. Just enjoy the day. Anyway, well, you do experiments, you see, and it's worthwhile doing a good few experiments and slowing yourself down, and then you realize how quickly you work when you're in your when you're in your normal zone, which isn't a bad thing, but you've got to at least be aware of it. If I'm on a podcast, it's going to be useless if I'm sitting there talking at 2 words a minute. It's it's just not the modern world, is it? So we don't have to slow ourselves down, but we do want to be aware at least of how fast we are operating. And usually the answer is going to be just relax, slow yourself down. It's nice to know, though, that the answer is always relax. The Buddhists taught us a big deal by giving us the word relax. We got that from the Buddhists, and we got love from Jesus. Okay. And it's kind of nice. It's wonderful because we get to be able to use all these spiritual words. We can align ourselves with both those things. So it's quite often now that I call things a blessing or, that sort of thing. The words that belong to religion suddenly become released and we get to use them. It's kind of nice. Now I have got this little image down here on there. It says restart daydream mode. And the reason that's there is because when I was considering all this slowing down thing, I was actually trying to really become slower as a person and to slow my engine literally in a sense. And I found that's impossible. For me, it didn't work. And then I thought, well, here's the way well, no, we'll get to that in a second. What I was saying is that I'd been thinking about slowing down. I was thinking about being 6 years old, sitting in a classroom with my hand on thing, looking out the window, and then a teacher in my imagination, teacher whacks the desk and we have to look forward and focus. Oh, yeah, okay, okay, okay. And then they say, oh, and we're going to test you on this in a week or something. Oh, wow, really? So in a sense, it's like we were perfectly young and happy doing, being us, being ourselves when we were young. But the education system kind of accidentally taught us to be anxious. It made us wake up, focus. Oh, you got to get ready for the next phase. You won't be ready for secondary school if you don't get this sort of thing. So ultimately, it's a case of how do we get back to that daydream mode? Well, I felt in that deep moment, I felt my daydreaming kid was still there. And so I just kind of turned it back on. So daydream mode. And I felt like, you know, I can do it. It's still there inside me. So that's why I wrote that there. Restart daydream mode. It's all this thing of just slowing ourselves down and giving ourselves lots of truths about and techniques, whatever we can, to remind ourselves that we can so easily end up going too fast in this intellectual world. But when we slow down, I hope you get from all of this information, things are actually going to get faster, kind of better, but in a calmer way, because you'll figure it out. Um, all right, so now we're just up to this diary part, the journal part. And when I've done that, we'll have finished A Way to Be, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So at the top of it, I've got a thing called Quick Notes, and that's because quite regularly I'm thinking of a new good idea, or I see a podcast and I hear somebody say something that's interesting, pardon me, and then I think, oh, I better write that down. So I need a place that I can write it down really fast, and I know I'm going to find it there tomorrow morning. So that's what the first part is, quick notes. Now, the next one down is identity, and that's the sort of thing that I use and still use, but not as regularly because I've become very good with it. Um, but for a well, the first line I've got there is, what else do I love about this? And I've got in yellow, in aware moments, ask this, meaning that if I exhale and find my relaxation, my higher awareness, my like get in touch with my um, guiding spirit for a second, um, usually everything is fine because I generally have a reasonable autopilot and everything's going well. My original spirit's running well. And then before I leave my higher awareness moment, I always ask myself, or I have the option to ask myself, what else do I love about this? And that just is a wonderful way of staying in touch with the wonderful aspects of the moment, that thing. This is the only moment there is right now. And it keeps you in that nice positive love zone. Now, there was another time where I had the word Dino up there referring to Dean Martin, because when I was assessing masculinity and all that sort of thing and rapport, I thought, Dean Martin, he's like the guy who's the ultimate in charisma. And the reason that I thought it was wild was because he gave me permission to not be at my best. Because Dean's shtick, his stage performance, and who he really was, I imagine, in real life, was very laid back, slow and calm, jovial. He carried a martini glass or some kind of glass. And so he was always a little bit in a tipsy zone, ready to laugh and have fun and just be wonderful. Um, so then I thought to myself, gosh, if that's the height of charisma, it means don't try too hard. Don't overthink it. Pretend you're tipsy. Just slow yourself down and roll with it all in a happy way. So that's the reason why for quite some time I had Dino written on the very top of my identity thing to help. So that when I had my aware moments, I would check myself and slow down, be less in a straight line, trying to, behaving as if there's a timer timing me. In fact, there was another story. I'll just mention it too. Normally, when I mow lawns, I'm all up in my head about it. I've got my precision way of doing it for the end result that it's highly efficient and I'll be finished in the least amount of time, as if somebody's checking on me. And I realized, gosh, I'm just not going to do that this time. I'm not even going to care. I'm just going to mow the lawns. And then I noticed there's a bit of paper, and so I picked that up. And I noticed the flower there, and so I go and have a little look. And I realize, okay, this is kind of fine, and this isn't really going to add any time to the whole mowing time, really. Ultimately, I'm just going to enjoy mowing the lawn and having the thoughts that I have So you see, it was just another way of slowing down, of becoming aware and saying, why am I going so fast? Just enjoy the moment and enjoy the creative things. You can channel your thinking in a way where you can have nice discoveries. Um, so anyway, that's all I can say about that. Now, second line it says slow down, especially with people. Okay, well that's relevant because this is what I'm talking about. So a lot of this is all about me testing to the extent to which I can slow myself down. And in the end, I decided, but Eric, you really like going fast. You kind of do have a fast intellectual thing. My voices go on, there's little discussions going on there permanently. And I like it because sometimes I hear somebody say something that's really clever and I should write it down. So I realized, okay, you don't have to slow down. You don't have to become like Dean Martin, although I should tilt that way if I'm at a party. Um, but what I do need to do, well, it still applies because if I'm at a party, when I'm near people, that's when I need to really get my spirit guide to get my original spirit to slow the heck right down and not be all up in my head about everything and simply try and enjoy the moment and connect with people rather than ideas. So that's an example of the sort of thing that you would put possibly in your journal, whatever ideas you have, how you're progressing and how you can improve yet from the point you're at, until you feel like you've basically got it going on, and then you don't read it so much anymore. But it's a really important part so that you design your life, your own life, in this identity section. Then it says, listen, focus on their experience, not my answer. Because in my bad habits, yeah, I would start interrupting as if I already knew what they're saying. And sometimes I feel I'm right, but it's still bad. I got to slow down, let them finish what they're saying, and then choose what answer I'm going to give. Formulate. Think about it. Don't just be reactive in conversation. Me, I'm talking about, because my communication style, which is my automatic communication style, is not ideal. Okay. At least for normal people. If I was hanging out with somebody who thought same kinds of things, now then we'd really start vibing. Um, yeah. So in a sense, really, when you think of it that way, yeah, the vibing that I'm not good at doing is that calm person to person one. But I do love it. I'm enjoying. This is that dance of life. I'm really enjoying that, and I want to spend the rest of my life vibing basically with others. Okay. Fill out my weaknesses. Oh yeah, we've done that as well. Sports, history, humor, whatever my weak points are, whatever I perceive them to be, well, I'll start working on them. How happy am I to wake up each morning? That was a useful one I remember putting in because there was a time where I realized, hey, I'm not really doing this thing properly because I'd realized I'd gone through a whole week and I didn't feel so good. It wasn't the thing that I'd signed up for by having done all this work. And then I thought, it must be because I haven't got my mindset done properly. I'm not doing this journaling correctly. I'm not focusing on it as much as I should be to get that mindset into that place because I'm starting to just be lazy with it. So I felt that that's a good sentence to have in there right near the bottom so that every now and again you read that and think, am I doing this? I think I am. It's all just step 3, right? Maintenance. And then the last one on identity is just do the next right thing. And that's all I do ever. I just formulate what is the next right thing that I should do to achieve the wonderful future that I want, but also to live each day in a really happy and productive way. That's identity. After that, I put in the handy things, to-do list of what the intention is for the day, anything that I need to do. Eliminate, reduce Any old damaging behaviors? That's an obvious one. For me, it's a sugar addiction. So I'm eating a lot of crackers and chips. Toastmasters meeting, that was there once too. I recommend doing all of these things that expand who you are. You don't have to go learning to speak in front of people, but why not? Give it a go. You don't have to be scared when you go to a meeting like this. When you go to any of these things, you kind of think, oh, but I'm a raw beginner, I won't know what to do. Well, neither does anybody else there. That's why we're there. It's all people that are growing together. It becomes a nice little community group in and of itself. It's called being friendly, going out. Yeah, I didn't used to do this either. Okay, now after this, I've got a section for masculinity and femininity. We can do this really quick because the data is in there as well. Um, well, I'll read it. For masculinity, put calm is strong. A man's presence is felt. So these, after having, I'll read all of these first. Stop talking shop. Only answer questions. Otherwise, I'm going to get too verbose and get too intellectual and just my poor original spirit um, doesn't know what to do. So my spirit guide says, just keep it on the down low, Eric. Just answer questions and be interested in the human aspects of any discussion. And then try and say it in as fewer words as possible. Honestly, I try. Have opinions. She expects you to lead. Yeah, I know. Look, guys and girls who suffer from nice guy syndrome, nice person syndrome, we really are quite friendly and relaxed. Don't mind too much where we go for dinner or whatever these questions are. I don't mind. It's all good to me. But a female, from my perspective as a man, and I chose to become masculine. This is why I grew this beard. But I've chosen, rather than go to the end of that spectrum I showed before and become a yogi or priesty kind of person, I decided purposefully that I want to live in this world. So I decided, yep, I want to tilt my autopilot to become more in line with what works. Uh, anyway, so yeah, have opinions, Eric. She expects you to lead. Also, no reverse charisma. Chris Williamson's got a good video on that, but actually, I've put that video in the 7 videos for communication recovery because listening, it's a really good one, which is all about listening, basically. So, reverse charisma is like we all know the loud charisma. They're people who are confident and noisy and they know a lot of people, so they're shouting across the room and doing their happy dance. Um, but reverse charisma, well, you'll watch the video and then you'll know. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. It's on my website. It's a part of step 2. But it's all about listening. In the end, it's all about being able to listen in a manner which allows the person who's talking to you to feel safe and open and express themselves and get really heard by somebody, even if it doesn't matter to you what they're talking about. At least give them the opportunity to feel that they're being heard. And that is another superpower, like kindness, forgiveness, acceptance, and gratitude. Uh, so it's important to keep that word, reverse charisma, in your mind. Now, at the bottom, I've got there Robert Glover and Corey Wayne. So Robert Glover, he's a guy who's done so many relationship therapy sessions and all these sorts of things all his life for guys and ladies. And he wrote the book No More Mr. Nice Guy. And ultimately, he's the kind of the thought leader in the field of what it is to be a man. And he has the support not only of sensible, good men, but of sensible, good women as well. It's a really good, balanced way that a man can be the way that a man should be. Yeah, supported by females as well, obviously. Corey Wayne has really itemized it all. He's got it all written down, the top down description, right? And so if you're unsure, or you just want to fill yourself with this sort of thing to get yourself out of nice guy syndrome, then that's a good way to go. Under femininity, I've got enjoys someone who is clearly in their masculine. My straight up relaxed manly conduct is fine. Generally wait for her to signal interest. Those are good things as well. Although one can do fishing. One can open and be a little more, and put out a few nets or whatever. Um, how do you say that? Yeah, it's okay to communicate your interest. Just do so in a nice, sensible, quiet, subtle way, and don't be too hung up on it. It's just fishing. You're not after a single fish, right? You're just in the world, and you're just being communicative in a nice, gentle way, in a nice, manly way. People on whose shoulders this work exists. So there I've got experts in the world of all of the things that are to do with all of this information, and they're all experts who will agree with all of this. All experts of the world will agree with all of this. It just is the case. That's why I've done it. Well, that's the end of a way to be. This is the shortest path that anybody can go on to reach that enlightenment, know thyself moment. We've done it. Okay. The next one, after I have a quick coffee or something, is going to be this, which will blow your mind. So this is the second to last image, and we're now starting on this new perspective on where we're at as a civilization. This diagram shows that since we came down from the trees with our spears and started throwing them at each other, we've learnt to kill each other better as time's gone on. And this is the story of bullying, but it's also the story of people who are living in fear. A lot of people died, whole communities, mothers and children slaughtered. And nobody had a place to complain in any of these times, because there wasn't a human law. It was all just whatever was going on, that's what happened. It's a horrible time, but at the same time as we've had this struggle, we've had other people who have been working on understanding who we are. And so we've got people like Buddha, Socrates, Aristotle, Jesus, Galileo, Darwin, and now love equals energy is the culmination of this process, the struggle to know ourselves. This is the point now we're at right now. It's our know thyself moment. And the reason that this is our know thyself moment is because we are all connected. We're all connected for the first time ever. And so this is the time we lock in that we are love. Because of this information, this is the token. Love equals energy is our meaning of life. It's our identity. And it's something every single person on earth can recognize as being true. So now we lock it in. We say, this is what we represent. This is what we want our society built on. We recognize that we're not going to let our brains fall out. We recognize that we're actually going to increase our ability to manage this world in a way which is good for all human beings. And it's going to lead to stronger progress, not a slowing down. But it will also lead to the next 10 years being a major, major party, like the coming of age of the human species. Because ultimately what this represents is we're shucking off our animal origins. From this moment on, like in the personal diagram that we had earlier, the mouse and the maze one, we're going to just have success after success from this point on. And it goes on for eternity. So this time period that we're living in right now is going to be seen as just a blip from when we came down from the trees, still with our animal fear program operating. And then we get to a point where we can say we're going to cast that aside, and we have the ability now with this information to be non-reactive and to live in a way that human beings are capable of living. It's the human dream becoming real so that we don't have to put up with this sort of stuff ever again. We know the story, don't we, about in Star Trek and things like that. Who we are is we end up going out into space, if not ourselves, then robotically. But we go out into space and we find things that are wrong and we make them right. That's how we know who we are. All right? That's our job from here on in. But going out into space and finding life is that's a long, long time to do that sort of thing. And so there's no rush. Once we're in this spot here and we solve global warming and we protect the Earth from any incoming asteroids, there's really nothing more for us to do but to keep progressing and learning and understanding science and reality. But also, most of the time, to just manage ourselves. And how we manage ourselves is simply finding and expressing joy with ourselves and with others. We just love all the things that humans love: competition, athleticism, mental athleticism, love making families, making communities. Everything that's fabulous for the human being is what we'll be doing for the rest of time. It's our joy and it's our responsibility to simply stop this. And then we, as the universe's gatekeepers for this time in this period, will be living up to ourselves and doing the right thing, and it will reflect in how we feel about everything. So this is a sudden surprise for everybody that this is the moment where everything is going to change because we're all connected. And it's the first time that's possible that this is going to be locked into place. And who's going to do it? Well, all people that we talked about once before, plus all the big companies. So they'll show their allegiance to this concept by putting a love equals energy symbol on their web pages to say, we represent humanity, all the ideas that go with love equals energy, human well-being. Everybody is going to be on board and will show their allegiance, to show their faithfulness, if you like, to the human heart. All right. That's that one done. We're now on the last image of the whole series. These are the effects now on what this new information is going to do and how it's going to transform our civilization, our societies. This is that reconfiguration of knowledge. It's the new sphere of truth. It's pure truth now. We don't have any of that confusion about who we are, and we know how to get ourselves into this position where everything is going to go extremely well. That's represented by the formula love equals energy. That's our origin story and our identity. Around that will be a way to be, which we've already just covered fully. Around that will be human history, and from that emanates all human knowledge to the cusp of what we know. This sphere of truth will be built by any of these big companies or between them all, but ultimately we will need an accreditation system so that we can know where we're at, and we can have desks in this area which feed us what's going on out in the cusps and get that to the news people, and we'll all be informed with what's going on. We'll unify to the point which to a degree which has never happened before. This sphere of truth has never happened before to begin with. But what it means is that this will soon become, it's all going to be online, of course, but it will be free for absolutely every human being, because the better educated we are, the more knowledge that we know about ourselves and how to be in this world, the better off we are. So it will be free and available to absolutely everyone anytime. But also, when we get these ideas into the podcast and discussed amongst the world's experts, that's when the governments all around the world will be able to say immediately, let's get this stuff into our secondary schools so that within a year or two, we have graduates who are coming out with this fabulous, energized and positive mindset. It's going to lead to everybody being on the right page as to what we're doing. And one of those things that we'll be doing is solving fusion and global warming. And we're going to do it not in a manner of panic. We're going to be doing it like we're covering our local sports teams. There'll be places in the world which are on the cusp, and there'll be places in the world which are reporting back as to what's going on the cusp. There'll be, at the beginning of each year, there'll be like the top 3 things we need to solve, like a maths prize. And then some team around the world is going to solve one of those things, and it will be a big hurrah moment for them. And we'll be happy that for them that they've claimed that victory on everybody's behalf, though, because they'll be sharing that knowledge. But thank you and carry on your good work. We're now going to race you to topple the next thing that needs to be solved. It's going to be like all of us working excitedly together to get this job done at the same time as partying, because that's what's going to happen next as I get to talk about the next thing that's going to happen. So you see, in this manner, we can throw away the doomsday clock and we will have more people than we can imagine who are doing the research, but also supporting those researchers. It's going to be like a big team sport. Now then, when in our modern society, it's kind of split between 2 halves. One is natural wisdom, and it's kind of held by religion. And the other side is natural logic, which is held by science. These are the 2 parts of the intellect and the heart. Now, when we put love equals energy in the middle, because it joins the 2, each after consideration, okay, in the first hour of hearing about these ideas, nobody's going to go, hell yeah. But after a day of thinking it through and realizing the truth of it, each side is going to be more than willing, enthusiastic to claim that love equals energy is the new gateway to a successful human future. Each side will do that. Now, we've already mentioned about the religion, about how they're going to focus more on the words of Jesus than the mystical stories about Jesus. But also, we don't really need to hear so much about the words of Jesus, because we now recognize that Jesus was describing what's in our hearts. So we all have that knowledge. So what's going to happen more likely, I think, there will still be masses for people who want to have masses. And there's some beautiful cathedrals and temples in the world where, we'll want to preserve the rituals that went on there. But more often, more generally, it'll be something like this. Every town has its places where there are churches, temples of all manners, and they will all probably be open Sunday, all day Sunday. People will be going there and getting free tea and cakes all day. There will be performances by school kids, by bands, by anything. It'll be like a village fete in a sense, a fair. There'll be people with stalls selling some things, food, and it'll be a center for anybody to just arrive there and meet people. Singles can meet singles, couples can meet couples, there'll be dancing, there'll be music. Scientists will meet scientists. You see, there won't be a distinction between priests and scientists anymore. We are all inhabiting those identities as individuals. When we join our hearts and our intellects together, we are all scientists, we're all priests, and we're all well, so we all become artists as well, and we just want to express who we are, our own specialties, and we're all so different. We will find ways of continuing to be different and yet still fit within this beautiful bell curve of what it means to be a loving human being. So you see, this is going to kick off basically the world's biggest party, which will kind of go on forever, but this is how we'll start. It'll be a coming of age for humanity. And so I feel like the discussions to do with this information and the partying, the major partying that's going to happen, will probably go on for a good 10 years. Should I have a quick read to see if I've missed anything? Yeah, the church might change its symbology. It probably will. You see, the problem is at the moment, it's still the case that the church walks in with the big cross, announcing this mystical story. And in the modern world, of course, it's just too much. It's kind of not quite the right way to do it. But it's happened up till now because it had to happen up till now, because it's become true. But now is that moment where we can reassess everything we're doing, just like we're doing as individuals, but as organizations as well. We can see, okay, it does make sense. We'll talk more about the words of Jesus than the mystical stories. And perhaps that means we can use a heart as a symbol, perhaps with a cross in it to have a historical reference. But all of these things will fall into line as they naturally should, just because it's true. It's the right thing to do. This is, after all, Jesus' formula. It says that everything is love. So this will all just fall into place as it will naturally do. I can imagine it a certain way, but whatever happens will be the right way. It'll become true. Um, so over the next 20 years, the people in China and Russia will also gradually relax and join in with our exhilarating, safe path to accelerated human progress through love and unity. So the big statement at the end is coming now. This is the end of the video. These 12 images show the way forward to end human suffering. It's pretty darn amazing. This is a gateway through which we can choose to live in a world that we all understand is the right way to be. This is the very first time it can happen. The sphere of truth is so compact, and because it's all true, there just won't be many arguments, you know? We'll just be bonding while still expressing, being individuals. At the same time, yeah, we did that. We can trust this path. So this is the other thing. Is anybody still skeptical? Well, listen to this. We can trust this path. It's free, governments. It's free. If you want to fix everything in your societies, you might want to choose this path. It's free. It's also scalable. It's unifying. It's fully transparent, almost instant. Can be communicated using 12 images alone, and is fully in accord with all human knowledge. Notebook. There are 0 other paths to global well-being. So, my friends, this is the truth. And let's discuss this on the podcast and get it going. Let's get Love Equals Energy on a lot of websites to show that this is something that's going to happen. And it will all happen all of a sudden because it's simply the right thing to do. It's just the old way is expensive, damaging, hurtful, ruins everything that a human society can become. And that's how we know that this is right. Okay, that's all I've got to say. I want to hear now what everybody else has to say. Thank you.